before we start the plenary, we have one more person who would like to say something, some remarks about the award that's just been given to Jay Browne. It's my pleasure to introduce Doug Elliott.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm sorry I was a few minutes late, and I had intended to speak beforehand, so I'm sorry if I'm holding up your program and your lunch. As many of you know, I'm a longtime AIDS activist and legal counsel to the Canadian AIDS Society. That other queen was tied up, so I was asked to come today on Her Majesty's behalf to make a few remarks on this auspicious occasion. For those of you who aren't aware, the Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Medal was created in recognition of the 60th anniversary of the accession of Queen Elizabeth II to the throne. 60,000 Canadians will be honored for their community service, 1,000 for every year of Her Majesty's reign. That amounts to just 0.001% of the Canadian population. So it's a very rare honor indeed. Rita Hall has graciously granted the Canadian AIDS Society the privilege of nominating 30 outstanding individuals for this award, as you've seen. So it's really one for every year that we've been engaged in the struggle against AIDS. Well, it came as no surprise to me that one of the people selected for this great honor by the Canadian AIDS Society was my longtime friend, Dr. Jay Browne. Simply put, no one has contributed more to the fight against AIDS in Ontario than Jay Browne. Jay left the bluegrass of Kentucky for Canada in 1969, was a social worker and director of social work at Chedoke-McMaster, and an associate professor at McMaster University. But his life in AIDS really began in 1985 when Ontario's new health minister, Murray Elston, decided to launch a provincial AIDS strategy that would embrace the community-based approach we had pioneered at the AIDS Committee of Toronto. Jay was appointed chair of the Ontario Public Education Panel on AIDS, OPEPA, which is where he and I first met. From the very beginning, Jay has been renowned for his respect for people living with HIV and his desire to empower them to speak out on their own behalf. I can also personally attest that as chair of OPEPA, Jay was instrumental in creating the enduring architecture of Ontario's AIDS prevention and education strategy. He continued in this role until a new Ontario AIDS Advisory Committee was formed in 1989. Jay was a member of that group until his appointment as coordinator of the AIDS programs for Ontario on October 15th, 1991. Jay is a force of nature. His restless energy, his wit, and optimism sustained him through many trying struggles with politicians and bureaucrats, and let it be said, with we AIDS activists on occasion, and also helped him cope with the considerable burden of grief and loss. When Jay launched a charm offensive, resistance was futile. Jean, how often have we heard Jay say, "We need to do this. How are we going to do this?" And then he would make it happen. Although he's certainly no redneck, Jay does seem to have lived by that Southern slogan, "Get her done." Before reviewing some of Jay's many accomplishments, allow me to share one small example of Jay's persistent creativity. Many years ago, I was approached by Doug Wilson and James Thatcher, two legendary activists who are no longer with us, but I know would be delighted to see Jay honored today. They thought there was a need for a legal aid clinic for people living with HIV. Jay enthusiastically supported the project, and then he shared his cunning plan with me. "Doug," he said, "the AIDS Bureau needs to fund this thing too. That way the clinic will never get cut. With two sets of bureaucrats involved, they'll never be able to figure out how to get together to agree on closing it." And Jay was right. Halco is still flourishing today, one of the many legacies in our province bearing the invisible fingerprints of Jay Browne. Jay was also directly involved in two key community organizations. In the late 1980s, Jay served as chair of the board of the Hamilton AIDS Network for Dialogue and Support, HANDS, one of the first ASOs operating in the province. In 2003, of course, Jay came out of his well-deserved retirement to become acting executive director of this organization. He helped shape new directions for OHTN and led the search for new leadership, put it back on track to become the vital agency it is today. Jay managed the impossible. Under his leadership, Ontario built a multi-sectoral, multidisciplinary consensus on its approach to HIV/AIDS care, prevention, and support that has continued to flourish to this very day. Some of his key accomplishments include securing funding for the Positive Action Fund that provided annual support to the PWA Foundation, securing $10 million in funding for HIV research. He played a key role with the inspiration of James Thatcher in creating the province's Trillium drug program that so many people depend on today. He worked with the community legal branch and public health to negotiate required changes to ensure that we had access to anonymous testing. He led the fight to get funding for the Ontario viral load testing program, so critical for managing the care of people living with HIV. He expanded the OHTN Board, and he worked with the ministry to create public education programs aimed at high-risk groups. Jay was never one to shy away from controversy. Jay had the ability to see beyond the need for improved services and programs, to recognize the need for research to inform those programs. He believed we didn't have to choose, we could strike a balance between the two to strengthen both sectors. Despite all these accomplishments, half of which any person would be proud to claim, I think Jay is best known to us for his humanity, his compassion, and his kindness. American philosopher Albert Hubbard said, "Man is only as great as he is kind." I agree. And Jay, that makes you the greatest. Congratulations.
This is the part of the conference where we do a lot of presentations, and it's quite emotional. So we have a very special presentation to make today, and I would like to ask Frank McGee from the Ontario Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care AIDS Bureau to come and present the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Medal on behalf of the Canadian AIDS Society. Frank?
Sorry, I'm a little disorganized. Which is, yeah, Jay just said that's not new. And that's why I got my hair cut. Less organization, but it's not working out. So, Jay is a winner of the Diamond Jubilee Award given out by the Canadian AIDS Society every year. And there are a few other winners in the room who we'll speak to in a few minutes. For those of you who don't know Jay, I'm just going to read from the program because he's got a long list of accomplishments. He received his master's in social work from Ohio State University and a Ph.D. in interdisciplinary studies from the University of Toronto. He was the director of social work at Chedoke-McMaster Hospitals and held a faculty appointment in the Department of Psychiatry at McMaster University as an associate professor. As the chair of the Ontario Public Education Panel on AIDS in the 1980s, Jay was instrumental in helping the Ontario government launch a very successful prevention education campaign. Jay has been a member of the Ontario AIDS Advisory Committee and the coordinator of the AIDS Bureau when it was created in 1991. He continues to be an inspirational force in the creation, inspirational force in all of AIDS work and in the creation of the OHTN. He served briefly as the interim ED of the OHTN, and he continues on the board as an honorary director. And also, I have to say, he taught me everything I know, so you can blame Jay for all that. Now, I'm going to reach behind Jay. So this is a certificate that Jay will be taking. We'll carry it for you, Jay. And there's a fancy medal here. Now I think, Jay, over to you. I think you want to make some comments.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for those kind words. I really want to thank the Ontario AIDS community for nominating me, and to the Canadian AIDS Society for selecting me for this recognition. And there's some worthy others. Something just fell apart, Frank.
It's the control, not you.
It's just the control. But they will be noted later, I guess. But I just want to make, God, the lights are bright. First, I just want to say how happy I am. I came to Canada back in August 6, 1969. I got to meet all of started the privilege of working with the gay community, which became an AIDS community, organized AIDS community. And I'm very grateful and happy that I did that. It's one of the smartest things I ever did. The other reason why it's one of the smartest things I ever did is Gina. I just want to recognize Gina. When I came to Canada, I was very lonely and pretty mixed up. And she straightened me out. But I just want to know she's been an inspiration. I thank her for her love, direction, an example. She's done. She gave me another reason for loving her, and I'm grateful to her. She gave me two wonderful sons. One's here, Dylan. Dylan is studying to be an academic clinical scientist like his mother, like Sean. My other son, and I'm very happy that both have fields of inquiry. Joe has music, and he's in Concordia, and he told me he's working with a Chinese opera. And I says, well, how do you get along with Chinese? He says, that has nothing to do with Chinese. So I don't know what kind of opera it is. But anyway, Joe's in Concordia with music, and Dylan's field of psychology. Two wonderful fields of inquiry. So I'm very grateful to Gina for giving me such precious, wonderful sons. Now, I hope you know, as I said, how glad, how happy I am I came to Canada. One of course, is the real privilege of having worked with you, the Ontario AIDS community. You're such a wonderful, diverse, and interdisciplinary group. You're so many different talents. People living with HIV, community-based AIDS service organizations, clinicians, researchers, and policy experts. For me, this presentation highlights and requires two things. First, we must remember some facts of our Ontario AIDS community history, and we want to set the record straight. Second, that Her Majesty's medal occupy the space where it belongs, so that its presence may better convey and inspire symbolic measures that are truthful, relevant, and meaningful to the members of the current AIDS community. First, let me set the record straight. It has been said in my receiving this recognition that I had vision and enabled activists and government to work together. In fact, the vision and the energy for the things we did right here in Ontario came from the AIDS community and primarily from the AIDS community soul or heart, people living with the virus, especially from those who were well enough and had enough determination and courage to become our Ontario AIDS activists. They were the ones with the wisdom and the vision. They understood what needed to be done in Ontario and provided the energy to do it. And we knew many of them as AIDS Action Now. It was the activists who ensured AIDS had its own portfolio in the Ontario government. Their leadership led to the creation of the AIDS Bureau, a wise move indeed. The activists also recognized the need for scientific data to better understand AIDS and those infected and living with the virus. They fundraised with the pharmaceutical companies that produced AZT to help establish Hood, the precursor of what is now OHTN. And look at the high standard and fantastic scientific activities that take place at OHTN. And this conference is an example for many years. In my experience, James Thatcher was the activist who provided the most visible leadership in creating what is now the OHTN. James passed away and is identified in Project Remember, a joint program of OHTN and the AIDS Bureau. Many Ontario AIDS activists, pioneers, are now remembered in Project Remember. There's about 30, and they all should have got the 30 medals. Many of them are here with us in spirit memory, and many are physically here with us today at this conference, including I haven't seen Greg, but I hope Greg Robinson's here. He's the director of Hood and the initiator of the cohort study. A much loved person, I expect all of you know. Greg just got off the cruise boat after a trip with his spouse. I expect a belated honeymoon. David Ho, the current chair of the OHTN Board. Two past chairs of the OHTN, Evan Collins and Bill Flanagan, are exemplary examples of the activists I'm talking about. There are also women, Maggie Anderson, Louise Binder, there's hemophiliacs, James Krepter, John Plater, Mark Bolbrook, all of which we've lost. But they constituted our activists. And these individuals are the exemplary examples of the AIDS activists who provide Ontario's vision and the energy to turn that vision into reality. What I am trying to say, that this medal doesn't belong to me. Like when I think about me, I think about Gene Bacon and Frank. Seems like everything I did, they were right there telling me what to do. What I'm trying to say is that this medal doesn't belong to me. It belongs to the Ontario AIDS community and its historic leaders and activists. So to ensure their courage and crucial contributions are remembered and that they inspire others, especially you, I'm asking Rick Kennedy, the educational officer of the Ontario AIDS Network, and a renowned AIDS activist in his own right, to come and receive this medal and display the medal as appropriate. Rick, can you come up? Where's the medal, Frank? Oh, right here, okay. Let me just say, let's put it on you, Rick. When the time comes, and we all pray that that will happen, that there is no AIDS and no need for an AIDS community. I would like the medal to go to the Canadian Lesbian and Gay Archives, the Ontario branch, CLGA, to be part of the community's history. Thank you very much. I was supposed to put it on you. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.